Though we have yet to fully realize Dr. King's dream, I put emphasis, please don't think I'm saying that one's over. We have yet to fully realize Dr. King's dream. Is it too early for us to have a dream of our own? What type of America should we be dreaming for our generation and beyond? How will we know when we have arrived there? What signposts should we be looking for along the way? Our country wasn't ready for Dr. King's dream, but that didn't stop him and others from dreaming it. Many in our country may not be ready for a new dream, but that shouldn't stop us from dreaming either. What portrait of America should we endeavor to paint for our children and grandchildren? I also have a dream for our country. I am not a man of Dr. King's courage or caliber. I am not a man of Dr. King's passion or prose. I am, however, a man with a dream. I dream of a nation more just and equal than the one in which we currently live. Our nation is most likely not ready for my dream. I pray that it may be one day. Number one, I have a dream that each of us will awaken to the possibility that we hold racial and ethnic prejudices in our hearts and minds, and that they are unhealthy no matter how small or seemingly benign they may appear. Most people in our nation are not overtly prejudiced against other races, but all of us are susceptible to subtle forms of prejudice that can hide in the corners of our souls. We are seldom taught this form of prejudice. It is usually environmentally absorbed, attaching itself without our knowledge. I dream of a new honesty and self-realization in this area, a day in which we can face the painful truth about the thoughts and feelings that can sometimes linger so quietly in our minds and hearts. The truth is that most of us exist in such an isolated world that we may never have an opportunity to challenge or investigate our prejudices. Most of the time, the vocabulary, figures of speech, colloquialisms, and humor that would be considered racially degrading are expressed to an audience as numb to them as we are. The proverbial tree is falling in our daily patterns of speech and conversation, but there is usually no one present with a discerning ear to hear it. I would never have considered myself to be a prejudiced person, but I was shocked after a critical examination of my own speech and heart. I was saddened when I began to examine the dialogue in many of my social circles and the monologue in my own soul. I was not intentionally mindfully prejudiced. I was blind. I don't recall anyone teaching me the phrases, jokes, and worldview that I embraced. I simply absorbed them throughout my life's journey. It was not until I paused to consider the awful racial implications of my thoughts and words that I became embarrassed and ashamed. I dream of a day in which all of us can at least be open to the possibility that such darkness could exist within us and that we would have the courage to wage war against it. Number two, I have a dream that there will be a reduction and redistribution of the societal ills and pains that plague our nation. My dream is that crime rates and poverty rates will continue to drop in our country as they have for the last few decades. I pray that we will continue to make progress in the areas of education, HIV and AIDS prevention, and infant mortality. Yet beyond my dream of a continued reduction, I also dream of a redistribution of representation in these things as well. I have no desire that any race increase its representation in these areas, but rather that no race will be overrepresented in them. If the black population of our nation is 14%, then black representation in prison, homicide, poverty, struggling students, etc. should match that percentage. So we say, what do you want? I want when my granddaughter does her high school book report on prisons and Googles it, I want her to find a different picture than you'll find when you Google it when you get home. I have a dream that one day we will understand that race and ethnicity, number three, does not determine behavior. People don't do what they do, like what they like, act how they act, or think the way they think because of their race or ethnicity. Worldview is what shapes a person's approach and response to life, not race or ethnicity. Our worldview is an amalgam of the ideas and norms we embrace. These ideas and norms are ultimately anchored in the words and images that we believe about ourselves and others. They eventually become our mindset, which is ever evolving as it accepts new ideas and rejects old ones. Who or what a person is or becomes is more weighted in these things than their particular race and ethnicity. I have a dream that this knowledge will one day be our lead instinct as we interpret the things that happen in our nation and world. Number four, I have a dream that we will one day realize that racial and ethnic groups are not, quote, rebukable. No one can say what blacks ought to be doing or what whites need to stop doing because no one possesses a broom large enough to sweep an entire race or ethnicity into one behavioral pile. We ought to never entertain thoughts like, you know how they are, or you know how our people can act. Foolishness. Black people don't act a certain way. White people don't act a certain way. No, quote, people act a certain way. If we wish to rebuke slacking fathers, then let us rebuke slacking fathers. If we wish to rebuke arrogant people, then let us rebuke arrogant people. Let us never, however, accept statements like black men need to take better care of their children or white people need to stop acting like they're better than other people. Such statements reveal our ignorance and do great disservice to the people in those groups for whom a rebuke is not necessary. Number five, I have a dream that we will no longer prostitute people of varying races to justify our positions and prejudices. Just because a person from a particular race or ethnicity has issued commentary about his or her own race does not guarantee that it is informed or accurate. Being a particular race does not give a person an enhanced perspective in diagnosing a situation regarding that race. Likewise, not being a part of a race doesn't prevent informed insight. The statement, quote, black people know more about tennis shoes than bank accounts, is inaccurate and prejudiced no matter the race or ethnicity of its author or how many people of any race may agree with it. I dream of a day in which we can see through this subtle yet effective tool that perpetuates division in our country. I dream of a day in which we will recognize that there is no, quote, official voice for the, quote, black community in our nation. There is no monolith of ideas and reactions among races or ethnicities. We have no national black or white voice because, despite what is often portrayed in the media, there is no national black or white viewpoint. Most of the people identified, quote, as black leaders in our nation don't even speak for a small portion of the people they are presumed to represent. Though many good people have done much good work to advance equality in our nation, we must recognize the sheer absurdity in thinking that any one person embodies the views and positions of, quote, black America. I dream of a day in which we will no longer invoke the ghosts of civil rights leaders that have passed away in an attempt to influence our national dialogue on matters of race. All we know about these great men and women is what they said while they were alive, which was based on what they saw and understood at that time. We have no way of knowing if they would still feel the same way today, or if the way they would feel today would even be relevant. I am not opposed to knowing or studying history, but I am opposed to using the mythic aura of revered or vilified figures to sway our present-day conversation. Attaching a famous or infamous name to our arguments and positions should neither enhance nor diminish their validity. In the end, it matters little what previous generations have said if we cannot find our voice to address the troubles of our generation. I have a dream that we will one day move beyond the compulsion to insert racial or ethnic modifiers into our national and personal conversations. I dream that we can one day move beyond discussions about black-on-black crime to the real issue of crime by anyone against anyone. I dream of a day that we can grow beyond the subcategory evaluations of black quarterbacks, black coaches, black politicians, black-owned businesses, black universities, etc. We may not be ready for this dream, but I see a day in which people and institutions will be measured based on their character and quality, not based on the subcategory of their race and ethnicity. I dream of a day in which using black as a modifier for a position or office or institution will seem as inappropriate as if white were the modifier of choice. I also dream of a day in which we can express our admiration, affection, and frustration in a way that avoids the insertion of a racial or ethnic modifier. I dream of a day in which someone can see the cutest little baby at the mall instead of the cutest little black or white baby. I long for a day in which someone will say, some lady cut me off on the highway instead of some black or white lady cut me off on the highway. I yearn for a day in which we can ask our children, who is the kid with the blue gloves on your team, rather than who is the black or white kid on your team. We may not be ready for my dream yet, but with conscious effort, we can take small steps toward it today. I have a dream that one day we will see the frailty of race and ethnicity for what it really is. The human designations of race are not only individually subjective, but also scientifically elusive. What's more, no matter how generationally entrenched black blood or white blood seems to be, it is very easily changed by the simple choice of a mate. There is no strengths or weaknesses inherent to any race, passed on through black genes or white genes. Black people are not better or worse at one thing. Neither are white people. Black people are not better at sports while whites are better at business. Black men are not born to spread their seed, and whites are not bred to be the ruling race. There is no such thing as pure white blood. There is no such thing as the itis. All such thinking is fantasy and fallacy. Google it later. Number 8. No, Pastor, that's real. That's real. No, it's not. No, it's not. Number 8. I have a dream that we one day understand that blackness is as impossible to define as whiteness. It is impossible to label behaviors, mannerisms, styles, attitudes, and speech as black or white. He talks black, she talks black, he talks white. That's silly. There is no unique and universal black values or white values. There's no such thing as talking black, acting black, dressing black, or even black music any more than there exists a white counterpart to these things. I also dream of a day in which we graduate from labeling the weakest examples of speech, conduct, and appearance in our society as talking, acting, and dressing black, while we label the strongest versions of these things as talking, acting, and dressing white. I dream of a day in which an album cover featuring black teens in a housing project standing in front of a Ferrari with their underwear showing, grabbing their crotches and flashing their gold teeth seems as odd to us as if it were white teens in the same photo. Both groups of kids should look out of place in such a picture, not one group more than another. I have a dream that we can one day, you understand what I mean by that? Why does white kids dress like that? Both kids look dumb. I don't care black or white. Isn't it pants hanging down? Well, that's you're dressing black. You're talking black. It's so silly. So silly. We believe stuff we don't even know why we believe it. I'll tell you why, words and images, the things that feed our mindsets. I have a dream, number 9. We're coming to a close. That we will one day come to grips with the depths of pain that exists on all sides of the racial divides in our nation, and that we will one day dignify that pain with a fitting acknowledgement and repentance. There is little doubt that people who are white drew the first blood in our nation. There is also little doubt that in our national history, and even on an individual level, there have been greater scale atrocities committed by white people who were by people who were white upon people who were black than the reverse. These truths notwithstanding, we must consider that in our present day, on the individual level, there has been pain inflicted by both sides upon both races of people. There are black people that are hurt and angry because of what people who are white and have done to them individually. There are also white people that are hurt and angry because of what people who are black have done to them individually. We need to address this common pain with humility and grace. In addition, we must never confuse what happened in our nation from the times of slavery until now as the actions and attitudes of, quote, white people. Surely the people who were primarily in charge of and behind those things were white, but it is not, quote, white people that are to blame. Likewise, we must never confuse the pain that has been caused individually by people who are black or white as the actions of black people or white people. Truly, there are awful people among every race and ethnicity, just as there are hurting people among every race and ethnicity. We must acknowledge this if we have any hope of moving forward. I have a dream, number 10, that we will one day be able to see through the deceptively true nature of racial or ethnic stereotypes. Whether we recognize it or not, we all carry internal estimations of the expected behavior of different racial and ethnic groups. We all carry internal estimations of the expected behavior of different racial or ethnic groups. As we go through life, we continually amass, quote, data that, quote, confirms our internal estimations are accurate. Sadly, whenever we encounter a person or situation that contradicts our estimations, it is often difficult to consider the possibility that our estimations may be wrong. We place people and situations into a new category, one of racial anomaly. Instead of questioning our definition of what it means for a person to act black or act white, we declare that the person did not act like their race. I dream of a day we can be delivered from such abiding ignorance. Let me pause right here. I've been told so many times, well, you know, Mike's white in my old church. Mike's white, but he doesn't act white. What does that mean? What does that mean? Well, you know what it means to act white. You know what it means to act black. No, we got to break free from that. In your thing here, it says it will require conscious effort to unshackle ourselves from the group-mindedness that subtly, craftily, slyly, and generationally invades our thinking. We must not only begin to question our presupposition about other races and groups, but about our own group as well. There is no specific program for black or white behavior, no life script that is more befitting for one race or ethnicity than another. We must no longer give life to these misguided characterizations about racial groups, including our own, without thoroughly investigating the source and validity of the descriptions we embrace. We know that it is unhealthy for group-mindedness to exist in a patrol car, on a judge's bench, at a parole hearing, within an HR department, or an admissions board, or in a jury. I dream that we will conclude that it is equally unhealthy for it to exist in our own minds as we dine at a restaurant, estimate a house of worship, or even raise our own children. 3 more. I have a dream, number 11. That we can one day understand that there is no universal black experience in our country any more than there is a universal white experience. This is not meant to imply that being white in America is the same as being black, but rather that one person's experience as a black man or woman in America is not the same as another's. Even if 2 black people grew up poor in the South in a single-parent home and went to the same school, they still cannot claim a universal black experience. Neither of them can legitimately claim they know what it's like to be black because the aggravating and mitigating factors of their individual lives are too varied to stake such a claim. The values within individual households, the roles and skill set of family members, and the emphasis on certain values are greater factors in shaping a person's life experience than anything else. Until we understand these things, we will never push beyond the tunnel vision through which we evaluate our life experiences or by which we attempt to build our futures. Let me explain that. Somebody says, oh, I know what it's like to be black, to grow up black. You don't know what that's like. I agree. But growing up, I was with some members of my church, and a guy said, yeah, I grew up when I went to school, a police car followed us to school every day. I said, a police officer followed your bus? He said, yeah, Pastor. That's what it was like growing up on the north side of Jacksonville, being black growing up on the north side of Jacksonville. And I was sitting there, and he said that, and his wife said, she said, I grew up black on the north side of Jacksonville. I didn't have cops following me. She said, y'all must have been bad kids. Here's my point. Here's my point. You can go through your life thinking, well, I know what it was like to be black. And somebody say, you know, I tried out for this club, and they didn't let me in. I tried out for this club, and they didn't let me in, but that's what it was like growing up black. Not necessarily, because some people try out for a club, and they come home, they tell their parents, hey, I tried out for the club, and they wouldn't let me in. And some parents say, well, you know what? No matter what you do, you'll never get around it. They'll always try to hold you down. Another parent said, it doesn't matter. You be your best, and one day God will make a way. Nobody knows how to grow up. I know what it's like to grow up black. It's all what we were told and what we embrace. That shapes a person being raised, not this determines what a person is. Number 12. I have a dream that we will one day escape the false pride that can spring from a clouded view of our national, racial, or ethnic heritage. There's certainly nothing wrong with tracing our ancestry and knowing our family history. There is also nothing wrong with feeling a sense of belonging because of our roots, be they European, African, South American, Asian, etc. There is, however, something wrong with latching onto these things as a source of pride or division against another group of people. The trouble with taking pride in our ancestry is that we seldom ask ourselves why we choose to stop at a particular place and time in the family tree. Why do we stop in Ireland, Slovenia, Congo, or China? Why not go back farther? Where were our ancestors before they were in that place from which we draw our identity? Where were they before that? And then where were they before that? If we keep tracing the line back far enough, we may come to either a swamp or a garden, depending on your worldview. When we get to that place, we will find that all of us came from the same source. Whether our Adam is scriptural or scientific, we share the same ultimate origin with every other person. If, for example, African is indeed the cradle of life, then all of us are ultimately and equally African, with no ancestral justification for division. I have a dream. May not be ready for my dream, but I still have it. That the posters of African American heroes that hang on the walls of many, quote, black schools, I hate that term, in our nation would one day cease to be needed. You say, what are you talking about? I've never seen these posters. The stark absence of white heroes on the walls of, quote, black schools is one of the most glaring indications that we have not yet arrived at a place of equality in our nation. I have a dream that one day little boys and little girls could look upon the walls of their schools and see images of human accomplishment without having to rely on these posters to deliver a message that white children never need to hear. What is that message? See, people that look like you can do great things too. I dream of the day in which posters of Bill Gates, Elie Wiesel, Neil Armstrong, and Princess Diana can hang on the walls of black schools and be as inspiring to the children as posters of Benjamin Banneker, Thurgood Marshall, Mary Bethune, or President Obama. I want the posters of white heroes to hang there until the children can see themselves in the lives of those people and be inspired to achieve their own individual greatness. I want a guy to look at a picture of Bill Gates and read underneath it, little 10-year-old guy, started a thing in his garage, became the richest man in the world, gave $6 billion away to eliminate global disease. And regardless of the race of the kid or the race of the person, I want him to go, man, I'm going to start a computer company one day. Some say, why does that matter to you? Well, let's keep on going. I dream of a day, next paragraph, in which I can take the posters of African American heroes and hang them on the walls of, quote, white schools in our nation. I want them to hang there until the children can see themselves in the lives of those heroes and be inspired to achieve their own greatness. I also dream of a day in which we will rest assured knowing that both groups of children will eventually find this inspiration. So we say, why is that important? Because my hero is black. My hero is black. I found a man and I looked at him and said, I want to be like that guy. And it never even occurred to me until he was black till later. Why? Because who he was as a man is what inspired me. Who he was as a man is what inspired me. Finally, I dream of a day in which the very notion of black school or white school will be a thing of the past, along with black or white congregation, business, neighborhood, etc. Ultimately, I yearn for a day in which neither whites nor blacks in our nation will see my dream as a threat to their racial or ethnic identity and heritage. America may not be ready for my dream, but I'm not afraid to dream it still.